Nathaniel Owens dove into the ocean just as the sun cracked over the horizon, slicing gold across the water's surface like a blade. He didn't usually swim this early, especially not on vacation, but something had kept him up all night. The board was threatening to vote him out at the end of the quarter. His company, his rules, his sweat, and now they wanted to replace him. He swam harder, as if the waves could punch the frustration out of him. When he surfaced and pushed his wet hair back, he saw her. She was floating calmly beside him, her face turned up toward the sky, arms out like she belonged to the sea. Long dark hair spread around her like ink in the water. He blinked once, then twice. She hadn't been there when he jumped in. "Sorry," he said, treading water. "Didn't mean to interrupt your piece." She opened her eyes and looked over at him, and for a second he forgot how to breathe. Her eyes were green, sharp, clear, like spring cutting through a winter fog. "You didn't. I like company. Just didn't expect it to be so loud," she teased, lips curving slightly. He laughed under his breath. "I'll try to splash more gently next time." She tilted her head. "You always swim like you're chasing something?" "Only when I'm trying to outrun a boardroom coup." That made her laugh, really laugh, and it hit him square in the chest. It wasn't just the sound, it was the look that came with it. No pretense, no fake smile, just a woman laughing in the ocean like the world wasn't burning. "I'm Layla Hensley," she said, still smiling. "Nathaniel Owens." She paused. "Owens, like the solar tech company?" He gave her a look. "You say that like you've memorized Forbes." "No," she said, grinning. "I say that like my dad does HVAC and complains every time someone installs your panels instead of calling him." "Well, tell him I said I'm sorry, and that I'm not the one doing the installs." She laughed again, and he found he didn't want to leave the water. They swam quietly for a while, side by side. Nothing flirtatious, just calm. Like maybe the world had paused for the two of them. Eventually, she said, "You're not from around here." "Manhattan." "Figures." "You got that I own 3 suits and 2 lives look." He turned to her. "And what look are you rocking?" "Beach broke. I nanny for a local family. I paint on weekends. And I swim when I can't sleep." He wanted to ask more, but she glanced toward shore. "I've got to get back before the kids wake up. Can I see you again?" The words spilled out before he could stop them. She raised an eyebrow. "You're on vacation. Maybe I'll stay longer." She looked amused, but something flickered behind her eyes. "I don't do vacation flings. What if I'm not looking for one?" She hesitated, then said, "Fine. I'm usually at the beach around 6. If you're here, you're here." Then she swam to shore, and he watched her go. The next morning, Nathaniel was back in the water before the sun even rose. And so was she. Layla didn't make it easy. She didn't ask about his money. Didn't seem interested in his name. Didn't care that he owned 3 homes and drove a car he'd had flown in from Germany. She just wanted to race him to buoys, talk about books she'd half finished, and steal his coffee when they sat on the sand afterward. He hadn't laughed this much in years. By the end of the week, he wasn't thinking about his board or the investors. All he wanted was more time with her. One morning, they sat on the beach, hair damp, clothes sticking to their skin, watching the sun rise. Layla leaned back on her elbows. "You know, I never expected this." "What?" "That I'd like you." He turned to her, mouth twitching. "Thanks." "No, I mean I had this version of you in my head. The suit. The success. I figured you'd be arrogant. Or bored. Or fake. And instead, you're grounded. And you look at me like I matter." His chest tightened. "You do." She looked away, cheeks pink. "Stay with me today," he said suddenly. "Let me take you out." "Nathaniel. No expectations. Just you and me. Let me show you something different." She hesitated. She always hesitated when he crossed a line from beach friend to something more. But then she nodded. He called his driver, and by 10, they were pulling up in front of the nicest boutique in town. She froze. "Why are we here?" "I made a reservation for lunch at Elora," he said casually. "That place with the 6-course tasting menu?" "Yeah. I can't go in there like this." "That's why we're here," he said, opening the door for her. "Pick whatever you like." "My treat." She stared at him. "You're serious?" "Completely." She stepped inside slowly, like she didn't trust it. But by the time she tried on a soft cream dress with thin straps and a high slit, he couldn't stop staring. "You like it?" she asked, eyes meeting his in the mirror. He stepped behind her, voice low. "You look stunning." She turned, looked up at him. Her fingers brushed his. He caught her hand. "Nathaniel, I want more than just mornings with you. I don't know if I'm ready for more." "I can wait," he said, "as long as you don't walk away." That night, under the soft lights of the restaurant patio with the sound of waves crashing nearby, Layla reached across the table and took his hand. "I've never let anyone in like this." "I'll take care of your heart," he said, voice rough. "Even if you don't give it to me yet." She looked at him, eyes shining. "I think I already have." And just like that, he knew. He was falling. Fast. Hard. Real. And she had no idea. Layla was late. Nathaniel stood at the edge of the water, arms crossed over his chest, the morning tide licking at his feet. The sun had already climbed halfway above the horizon, bleeding soft orange into the sky. But there was no sign of her. He checked the beach again, scanning the curve of sand where she always appeared, hair tangled, eyes still heavy with sleep, always barefoot. But today nothing. He waited 20 more minutes before finally walking back to the villa, the one he'd been renting for 2 weeks longer than planned. His assistant had sent 3 reminders about the board's vote. He hadn't replied to any of them. Every instinct told him to give her space. And yet, by noon, he was in his car, asking his driver to pull up to the corner store she'd once mentioned buying snacks from with the twins she nannied. He stepped out, ignoring the way people stared. A man in a crisp navy shirt and tailored trousers didn't exactly blend in next to surfboards and flip-flops. Inside, the clerk gave him a wary look. "I'm looking for Layla Hensley. She sometimes comes in with 2 kids. The man nodded slowly. "She was here yesterday." Looked upset. Left without buying anything. Nathaniel's jaw tightened. Did she say where she was going? No. But she was muttering something about her brother. And the word hospital came up. That was all he needed. He was already dialing his security chief before he made it back to the car. Find out where her brother is. Hospital, clinic, anything. He didn't care if it was invasive. He wasn't going to sit in silence while the only woman who'd ever made him forget the weight on his shoulders suddenly disappeared. 2 hours later, he had an address. A small county hospital just off the main highway. When he arrived, he spotted her immediately. Layla sat on a bench outside the emergency room, her elbows on her knees, her face buried in her hands. Her shoulders were hunched. Her hair pulled back in a messy knot, like she hadn't bothered to look in a mirror. He didn't call her name. He just walked straight to her and sat down beside her, knees brushing. "Don't ask if I'm okay," she said without looking up. "I wasn't going to," he replied gently. She lifted her head slowly. Her eyes were red, not from tears, but exhaustion. Stress clung to her like a second skin. "My brother got jumped last night. He was walking home from his shift at the marina. They didn't take anything, just beat him and left." Nathaniel's jaw clenched. "Did they catch who did it?" "No. Cop said he probably mouthed off to the wrong guy. As if that makes it okay." He reached for her hand. She let him take it. "I didn't want you to see me like this," she whispered. "Why?" "Because this isn't the version of me people fall for. This is the one they run from. I didn't fall for a version of you, Layla." His voice was rough. "I fell for you." She looked at him then, eyes wide, mouth parted like she wasn't sure she heard right. "I thought you were just being charming," she said finally. "I was. But that doesn't mean I didn't mean it." She exhaled shakily. "I can't do dinner dates and surprises right now. I have to help him. He's got a fractured rib and no insurance. I'm trying to figure out how to cover the bills. I already asked for an advance from the family I work for. You don't have to explain. Let me help." No, her refusal was instant, sharp. "I don't take handouts, Nathaniel. This isn't a handout. It's me standing beside you when things get hard." She shook her head. "You're used to fixing things with money. I'm not something you can fix. You're not broken." She closed her eyes for a moment, then stood. "I need to go back inside. He's asking for me. I'll wait." "You don't have to." "I know." She hesitated again. But this time she didn't argue. Hours passed before she returned. The sun had gone down and the lot was nearly empty. He was still sitting on that bench. "He's sleeping," she said softly. "Out of danger." Nathaniel stood, brushing off his sleeves. "You haven't eaten." "I'm not hungry. Come with me. Just for a minute." She didn't resist when he took her hand. His car was waiting. The moment she stepped inside, she froze. The back seat was filled with grocery bags, neatly packed. Fruits, granola bars, bottled water, a box of herbal tea, tissues, a soft sweatshirt folded on top. "I didn't know what you like, so I bought a bit of everything." Her throat bobbed. "Why would you do this?" "Because I wanted to." He didn't touch her. Didn't push. She climbed into the seat beside him, pulled the sweatshirt into her lap, and whispered, "No one's ever done that for me. You deserve more than just this." She turned her face to the window. He let her have the silence. When they reached the villa, he didn't ask her to come in. But she followed him anyway. They sat outside on the terrace as the ocean roared beneath them, the moon reflecting in broken pieces along the water. "After a while," she said, "I'm scared." "Of what?" "That the second I let myself believe this is real, it'll disappear." He leaned closer, brushing her knuckles with the back of his fingers. "I'm not going anywhere." Her eyes brimmed, but she didn't cry. Instead, she leaned in and kissed him soft, uncertain, like a question. He answered her with his hands on her face, his mouth warm and sure against hers. And when she pulled back, breathless, she whispered, "I think I'm in trouble." He smiled against her skin. "Good. So am I." The wind was sharp that morning, carrying the scent of salt and something colder, like the season was shifting, even though the calendar still insisted it was summer. Layla stood at the shoreline, arms wrapped tightly around herself, watching the waves roll in with a quiet intensity. Nathaniel hadn't seen her since she'd left the villa 2 days earlier. He hadn't pushed, hadn't called, but every part of him wanted to. He stepped out of his car barefoot, shoes discarded in the back seat like they didn't belong in this world she occupied. The sand was cool beneath his feet as he walked toward her. She didn't turn. "You always show up when I need quiet. And you always find quiet when I need answers." She finally looked at him then. Her face was unreadable. "I'm leaving," she said. "For a while." His chest tightened, but he kept his voice even. "Where?" "Back home. My mother's house. My brother can't manage alone, and the family I nanny for is heading to Europe for 3 weeks anyway." "How long?" "I don't know." He stepped closer. "I could come with you." She laughed, but it wasn't cruel, it was scared. "You think you could handle a 2-bedroom house with 3 adults and a leaky roof? You'd last a day." "I'm not made of glass, Layla." "No," she said, softer now. "But you're made of a different world." He let that sit for a moment, the waves crashing behind them. "Do you want this to be over?" he asked. "No," she whispered. "Then don't make it something it's not. Don't run because it's easier than letting me in." "I'm not running," she said. "I'm choosing what's right. And right now, that's my family." He nodded once. "Then let me drive you. I've got a bus ticket. I didn't ask if you needed a ride. I asked to take you." Her mouth twitched like she didn't know whether to argue or thank him. But in the end, she nodded. The drive was 3 hours north. They barely spoke. Not because they were angry, but because every word might crack something delicate between them. When they pulled up to the small house tucked behind an overgrown hedge, she stared out the window for a long time. He didn't ask what she was thinking. He just waited. Finally, she turned to him. "I've never brought someone here before." He reached over and brushed a strand of hair behind her ear. "Then I'll be careful where I step." She got out slowly, and he followed. The porch creaked beneath their weight. A woman peeked out from behind a curtain inside, then opened the door. Her face was older than Layla's by 20 years, but the same sharp eyes. "You're late," she said, not unkindly. "And you brought a stranger." Layla stepped forward. "This is Nathaniel." The woman's eyes flicked over him. "Looks expensive." "He's not," Layla said quickly. "He's just here." The woman stepped aside. "Then he can stay for dinner. But he's washing his own plate." Inside was everything he expected: walls that needed paint, furniture that had seen better decades, a table with mismatched chairs. But it was alive. Real. He sat at the table while Layla and her mother argued gently over seasoning and potatoes, while her brother, arm in a sling, tried to sneak a beer from the fridge. No one treated Nathaniel differently. No one asked what he did or how much he made. They asked if he liked onions and if he could pass the butter. Afterward, as Layla walked him out to his car, dusk settling over the backyard, she stopped him with a hand on his chest. "You didn't belong in there," she said. "I didn't feel out of place." "That's because you're good at adapting." "But that's not the same as belonging." He looked down at her. "Do you belong there?" She hesitated. "More than I belong anywhere else." "I want to be part of this," he said quietly. "Whatever this is. Even if it's messy. Even if I don't know how." Her voice trembled. "I don't want you to wait for me." "I'm not waiting," he said. "I'm choosing." She looked away. "You don't get it. I've been the person people wait on before. And eventually they stop. I'm not them. Maybe not. But you're still going to leave. Maybe not today. Maybe not next week. But this house, this life, it's not yours." He reached into his jacket and pulled out a small envelope. Handed it to her. She opened it slowly, brows furrowing. Inside was a sketch. Her sketch. The one he'd seen her working on weeks ago at the beach, half finished. Except now it was complete. Framed. The paper crisp, the lines dark and clean. "I found it tucked in one of your books," he said. "You left it at the villa. I had it framed." She stared at it, silent. "I don't need to be part of your world to love it," he added. "And I don't need you to move into mine. I just need you to stop pushing me out of the one we've made between us." She looked up at him then. Really looked. Her hands were trembling. "You scare me," she said. "Because I'm real?" "No. Because I don't want to imagine what it feels like to lose you." He leaned down, pressed his forehead to hers. "Then don't." She kissed him again, this time not like a question but like a promise. And when she pulled away, she whispered, "Come back in 3 weeks." 3 weeks. He could survive that. Just not a second longer. The sky was bruised with the colors of early dusk when Nathaniel stepped off the train. He'd ignored his driver's offer to pick him up, preferring the stillness of the ride and the quiet of the station. 3 weeks. Exactly as she'd asked. He hadn't spoken to Layla since the night he drove her home. Not because he hadn't wanted to, but because she'd asked him for space. And he respected her enough to give it. But now he was here. And he had no idea if she'd be waiting. The street was empty, the last traces of sunlight slipping behind the rooftops. He walked the final stretch to her house, the same one where they'd shared a clumsy dinner with her family, where he'd watched her laugh with her brother and argue with her mother without holding anything back. Now it was quiet. The porch light was on. The door was open. He climbed the steps slowly, heart pounding harder than it had in any boardroom. Inside, the smell of something warm and spiced drifted from the kitchen. He stopped just short of the doorway. Layla stood at the counter, back to him, stirring something in a batter pot. Her hair was loose, tumbling down her back. She hadn't noticed him yet. "I wasn't sure if you'd actually come," she said without turning. "I wasn't sure if I'd be welcome." She looked at him over her shoulder, a flicker of something unreadable in her eyes. Then she set the spoon down. "I've been thinking," she said, facing him fully now, "about what it would mean to try. For real. Not just when things are easy." He stepped into the kitchen, the floor creaking softly beneath his feet. And I realized you're the first person I've ever wanted to build something with. Not escape with. Not lean on. Just build something." He drew closer but didn't touch her. "I don't want to be a lifeline, Layla. I want to be a choice." "You are," she said. "But I had to be sure I wasn't picking you just because you made life easier. I didn't want comfort, I wanted truth." He raised an eyebrow. "And what's the truth now?" "That this does, it terrifies me. But letting you go scares me more." He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a small, folded piece of paper. "Then maybe this is a good time." "What is it?" "An offer. Not a contract," he added quickly. "Not something you have to sign. Just something I want you to read." She opened the paper carefully. Her eyes scanned the text once, then again. Her mouth parted. "You bought the art space on 14th and Garrison?" "I didn't buy it," he said. "I invested in it. It's still yours if you want it. You talked about having a space for the kids in the neighborhood to paint, somewhere they could get messy and loud and not be told it was a waste of time." She blinked fast. "You remember that?" "I remember everything you say when you're passionate. It's when you're most honest." She pressed a hand to her mouth, then looked up at him. "Why would you do this?" "Because I want to see you thrive. And because I want to be part of a life where you don't have to choose between your heart and your responsibilities. Tears slipped down her cheeks, but she didn't wipe them away. I never thought someone like you would ever see someone like me. I don't see someone like you, he said quietly. I see you. She moved to him then, closing the distance, wrapping her arms around his waist and burying her face against his chest. He held her tighter than he ever had. I was so afraid I'd lose myself in your world, she whispered. That's never going to happen. I don't want to change you. I just want to be next to you while you become everything you already are. She looked up, her voice barely holding steady. So what happens now? We build it. Whatever it looks like. We figure it out together. She pulled back slightly. I don't want Manhattan. Not yet. I'm not ready for that world. Then we'll split our time. Here. There. Wherever you feel like you can breathe. You lead. I'll follow. A smile broke through her tears. You're really not what I expected. I dove into the ocean to escape my life, he said. And I found the part one didn't know I was missing. A knock at the door interrupted them. Layla wiped her cheeks quickly as her brother stepped in, tossing his keys onto the table. You two are disgustingly cute, he muttered. I'm going to pretend I didn't see anything. That's fair, Layla said, laughing now. Dinner's almost ready. Her brother disappeared into the back room and Nathaniel looked around the kitchen. I like it here, he said. You say that now, Layla teased. Wait till the plumbing backs up. Still sounds better than any boardroom I've ever been in. She reached into a drawer, pulled out a second spoon, and handed it to him. Then start stirring. If we're building something, it starts with this. He took the spoon. And tomorrow? We paint the studio, she said. The kids are already asking. He leaned in and kissed her softly, the kind of kiss that didn't need to prove anything. It just was. In that small kitchen, under dim lighting and surrounded by the smell of something homemade, Nathaniel finally understood what it felt like to be home. Not in a penthouse. Not on a jet. But here. With her. And it was everything. By the time the studio opened its doors, the air had turned crisp and trees had begun to trade their greens for golds and rust. Layla stood outside the weather-worn brick building, keys in hand, the new sign above her painted in bold strokes, the Cove Collective. Children's laughter echoed from inside, brushes already clattering in water jars. She turned to Nathaniel, who stood beside her in jeans that had paint on them for the first time in his life. You sure you're ready for this? She asked, watching as two kids darted past the entrance, hands stained blue and red. I already fought off a 6-year-old for the last easel, he said. I've crossed the point of no return. She laughed, the sound softer now, grounded. He loved that laugh more than he'd ever admit. They stepped inside where the open space buzzed with life. One wall was covered in canvas rolls, another with shelves of donated supplies. In the center, Layla's brother sat in a folding chair, arm now fully healed, showing a group of kids how to splatter paint without drenching each other. Her mother stood by the kitchenette, handing out paper towels like a general in an art war. Layla moved through the studio like she was part of the air that filled it, checking on projects, giving encouragement, guiding hesitant fingers. Nathaniel leaned against the far wall, arms crossed, watching her without interrupting. Every time she passed, she touched his shoulder or brushed against his side as if grounding herself with him. When the last child was picked up and the studio was quiet, she sank into the bench by the window, stretching her legs out in front of her with a contented sigh. I didn't think I'd feel this calm, she said. You've built something real. Not just for them. He nodded toward the now empty work tables. But for yourself. She looked over at him, eyes thoughtful. And for you. I didn't build it. I just made sure you had the space. She tapped the bench beside her. Come sit. He did, settling in beside her, their shoulders touching. I've been thinking, she said, about what this is. What it's becoming. He waited. I want to stay here, she continued. Not because I'm hiding from anything, but because this is where I can give the most. But I don't want to do it without you. He turned to her. Then don't. I mean it, Nathaniel. I don't want us to be some long distance maybe. I want roots. I want us to build something that doesn't disappear when your board calls or my roof leaks. He reached into his jacket, pulling out a small velvet box. He didn't open it. He just placed it in her hand. I've been carrying this for weeks, he said. Not because I was waiting for the right moment, because I was waiting for the right answer. Her breath caught, but she didn't open it yet. I don't need a big wedding, she said. I don't want to be paraded in front of 100 people I barely know. Then let's not, he said. Let's make it ours. Just us and whoever we want standing beside us. She opened the box. Inside was a ring unlike anything she'd ever imagined. No diamonds, no flashy metal. Just a single round sapphire set in a gold band, elegant and understated. It's beautiful, she said, voice thick. It reminded me of the ocean that first morning. Of you in it. She threw her arms around him, knocked the box from his hand, and kissed him hard enough to make him laugh into her mouth. Yes, she whispered. Yes, yes, yes. They were married 3 weeks later beneath a canopy of autumn leaves, with her brother officiating and her mother weeping into a linen handkerchief she pretended wasn't hers. Nathaniel wore no tie. Layla wore a deep green dress and walked barefoot through the grass. There was no aisle, only a worn path between trees, children stringing paper cranes from branches. After the vows, they danced under fairy lights and passed around slices of pie from the bakery down the street. He gave her a key to his Manhattan penthouse, but she never took it. Instead, he leased a second-floor apartment 2 blocks from the studio, with enough light for her to paint and enough space for him to work remotely when he wasn't traveling. They shared coffee in mismatched mugs every morning, argued over paint stains on the couch, and kissed like they were always running out of time. One evening, Layla stood at the window, watching rain tap against the glass. Nathaniel came up behind her and wrapped his arms around her waist. You ever regret it? She asked. All this. He kissed her shoulder. Not for a second. I'm thinking about adding a writing corner in the studio, she said. For kids who don't paint but want to tell stories. He smiled against her skin. Then let's go pick out furniture tomorrow. They stood there a while longer, listening to the storm roll by, safe inside the life they built. And when he whispered, I love you, she turned in his arms and said, I know, you always have.